There were moments inside the sprawling world of the bold and the beautiful when danger did not arrive loudly. It did not announce itself through screaming confrontations or dramatic confessions beneath crystal chandeliers. Sometimes danger moved quietly, patiently, hiding beneath charm and calculated smiles until the damage had already spread too far to contain. By the time people realized they were standing beside something poisonous, trust had already been weaponized against them. That was exactly how Remy Price operated. He did not force his way into lives like a storm battering through locked doors. He seeped into them gradually, identifying fractures others overlooked, studying emotional vulnerabilities with terrifying precision. He understood that fear divided families faster than hatred ever could. Suspicion weakened love. Shame destroyed loyalty. And once enough confusion existed, truth itself became almost impossible to recognize. R.J. Forrester realized this far too late. By the time he fully understood what Remy truly was, the damage had already begun spreading through both the Logan and Forrester families like a slow-moving infection. The signs had existed for weeks. At first, they seemed insignificant. Strange silences between Dylan and Remy whenever anyone else entered the room. Nervous glances exchanged across crowded gatherings. Conversations that ended abruptly the moment RJ appeared nearby. Individually, none of it seemed alarming. But together, the inconsistencies began forming a pattern that RJ could no longer ignore. What disturbed him most was Dylan herself. She had changed. RJ knew her well enough to recognize the subtle differences others overlooked. The tension in her shoulders whenever Remy's name surfaced in conversation. The forced calmness she adopted around him. The way she increasingly avoided eye contact whenever anyone questioned their connection. She looked less like a woman in love and more like someone surviving a hostage situation no one else could see. That realization haunted RJ relentlessly. Portrayed by Joshua Hoffman, R.J. Forrester had inherited much of his family's emotional intensity, but unlike many Forresters before him, he still believed problems could be solved through honesty. That optimism had survived despite years spent inside a family empire built on manipulation, betrayal, and carefully disguised power struggles. Somewhere beneath the wealth and glamour, RJ still wanted to believe people could be saved before darkness consumed them completely. That belief became the reason he started investigating Remy. And eventually, the reason his life nearly shattered. The first real clue arrived unexpectedly during a late-night conversation with an old acquaintance from the California Institute of Arts, where Remy once studied before quietly disappearing under circumstances few people openly discussed anymore. RJ had contacted several former students hoping to understand why Remy's name provoked such visible discomfort whenever it surfaced among people who knew him in the past. Most refused to talk. Others claimed they barely remembered him. But fear had a way of exposing itself unintentionally. One former student hesitated too long before answering simple questions. Another abruptly ended a call the moment RJ mentioned Remy directly. The reactions themselves became more revealing than any actual information. Then finally, after days of searching, RJ found someone willing to speak. The meeting took place inside a small art cafe tucked away beneath downtown Los Angeles, where rain streaked endlessly across the windows while jazz music drifted softly through the dimly lit interior. The woman sitting across from RJ looked exhausted before the conversation even began. "You should leave this alone," she told him quietly. RJ leaned forward slightly. "Why?" She stared down into her coffee for several seconds before answering. "Because Remy doesn't let things go." Those words settled heavily between them. The woman eventually revealed fragments of a past Remy worked very hard to erase. Violent outbursts hidden beneath administrative silence. Obsessive behavior dismissed as emotional instability. One incident involving a professor who accused Remy of threatening another student after a rejected relationship spiraled into stalking and intimidation. Another involving property destruction inside the sculpture department late one night after Remy reportedly suffered some kind of breakdown. Every scandal disappeared almost immediately. Money helped. Influence helped more. But the pattern remained undeniable. Remy Price had a history of dangerous behavior carefully buried beneath institutional protection and manipulated narratives. And Dylan was somehow entangled in it. RJ left the cafe that night with a growing sense of dread twisting inside his chest. The deeper he looked into Remy's past, the clearer one horrifying truth became. Remy did not merely manipulate people emotionally. He controlled them through fear. That understanding transformed RJ's concern into urgency. Because suddenly Dylan's behavior made terrible sense. She was afraid. Not uncomfortable. Not conflicted. Terrified. The realization consumed RJ over the following days. Sleep became impossible. Every interaction between Dylan and Remy felt charged with hidden meaning now. Every smile Dylan forced into place looked more artificial than the last. RJ found himself replaying old conversations repeatedly, searching for clues he previously missed. And one memory returned stronger than all the others. Several weeks earlier, RJ accidentally walked into the design office late one evening and found Dylan standing alone near the sketch tables while Remy spoke to her in a low, controlled voice. The atmosphere between them felt deeply wrong. Dylan's face had gone pale the moment she noticed RJ entering the room. Remy, meanwhile, smiled calmly. Too calmly. At the time, RJ dismissed the encounter as tension between former lovers or complicated personal history. Now he understood something far darker existed beneath the surface. The turning point came when RJ discovered old campus security records linked to Remy's final year at art school. The files should have been sealed permanently, but a contact inside university administration quietly provided access after hearing enough rumors to become concerned himself. What RJ found horrified him. Photographs of injuries. Witness statements. Formal complaints later withdrawn under mysterious circumstances. One report described a student claiming Remy followed her for weeks after she rejected him romantically. Another referenced physical violence during an off-campus confrontation severe enough to require hospitalization. The institution buried everything. Officially, Remy Price left school voluntarily for personal reasons. Unofficially, the administration feared scandal more than they feared him. RJ sat alone inside his apartment staring at the files long after midnight while rain hammered against the city outside. Anger burned through him with increasing intensity, not only because of what Remy had done in the past, but because nobody stopped him. People knew. They simply looked away. And now Dylan and possibly others were paying the price for that silence. RJ made his decision before sunrise. He would confront Remy directly. Not later. Not after gathering more evidence. Immediately. Because every instinct inside him screamed that waiting any longer could end disastrously. The following afternoon, Forrester Creations buzzed with its usual polished chaos. Designers rushed between meetings carrying fabric samples and portfolios while assistants moved through hallways balancing phones, coffee trays, and impossible schedules. From the outside, the company still projected elegance and control. But beneath the surface, tension had become constant. The growing fractures between the Logan and Forrester factions infected nearly every conversation now. Hope's possible departure. Brooke's increasingly open hostility toward Steffi. Ridge struggling unsuccessfully to maintain unity. Everyone sensed something larger approaching, though few understood exactly what form the explosion would take. RJ barely noticed any of it as he stormed toward the design office. The files remained tucked beneath his arm like ammunition. Inside, Remy stood alone reviewing sketches near the drafting tables, sunlight filtering through massive windows behind him. He looked completely at ease, calm, composed, almost elegant in the way dangerous people often appeared before violence erupted. He glanced up as RJ entered, and smiled. That smile immediately intensified RJ's rage. Busy day? Remy asked casually. RJ threw the folder onto the desk hard enough to scatter papers across the surface. I know about the school. For the first time, Remy's expression shifted slightly. Not panic. Recognition. A predator recognizing another person finally understood what stood in front of him. You've been investigating me. RJ stepped closer. How many people did you hurt? Remy sighed softly, almost disappointed. You really should have stayed out of this. The calmness in his tone felt more threatening than shouting ever could. RJ pointed toward the folder. You stalked women. You assaulted people. You threatened students until the school buried everything. Remy's eyes darkened subtly. And Dylan, RJ demanded. What are you doing to her? That question finally changed the atmosphere completely. Something cold flickered across Remy's face, a brief glimpse beneath the mask. You care about her. RJ ignored the observation. She's terrified of you.
No, Remy replied quietly.
She's loyal to me. The statement carried disturbing certainty. RJ realized then just how deeply Dylan had become trapped inside whatever psychological web Remy constructed around her.
Fear.
Manipulation.
Dependency.
The same patterns repeated over and over through every story RJ uncovered from Remy's past.
This was never about romance.
It was about control. You're sick, RJ said. Remy laughed softly. You sound naive. The insult only fueled RJ's anger further. Years spent watching his family destroy themselves through lies and manipulation suddenly crashed together with the horrifying reality standing before him now. He was tired of people like Remy hurting others while everyone else remained too afraid or distracted to stop them. You stay away from Dylan, RJ warned. And you stay away from Electra. At the mention of Electra's name, something dangerous sharpened in Remy's eyes. That reaction confirmed everything. RJ's pulse quickened instantly. You're targeting her too. Remy stepped closer slowly now, all traces of casual charm disappearing. You have no idea what you're talking about. Then deny it. Silence. That silence became answer enough. RJ shoved him hard. The movement happened almost instinctively, driven by fury and protective instinct colliding simultaneously. Remy stumbled backward into the drafting table, several design sketches fluttering onto the floor. For one suspended second, the room became perfectly still. Then Remy attacked. The speed of it shocked RJ completely. There was no hesitation, no emotional outburst, no loss of control. Remy moved with frightening precision, striking RJ directly across the jaw before slamming him violently against the edge of the design counter. Pain exploded through RJ's ribs instantly. This was not an ordinary fight. Remy fought like someone experienced in causing damage quickly. RJ recovered fast enough to throw another punch, catching Remy across the cheekbone hard enough to split the skin. Blood appeared immediately. But instead of retreating, Remy smiled again. That smile terrified RJ. Because it revealed enjoyment. The office descended into chaos. Sketches scattered across the floor while furniture overturned violently beneath the force of the struggle. RJ managed to drive Remy backward briefly, fueled by adrenaline and rage, but Remy fought with ruthless efficiency. Every movement targeted weakness. A brutal elbow into RJ's stomach stole his breath. Another strike sent him crashing against the glass conference table. Pain radiated through his body. Still, RJ kept fighting. Because beneath the violence now existed absolute certainty that Remy represented genuine danger to everyone around him. You're done hurting people, RJ shouted. Remy slammed him hard into the wall. No, he whispered coldly near RJ's ear. You are. The statement made no sense until seconds later. Remy suddenly changed tactics completely. Instead of continuing the fight directly, he grabbed a half-empty whiskey bottle sitting near the office bar, leftover from a previous executive gathering, and smashed it violently against the desk edge. Glass shattered everywhere. RJ stared in confusion. Then realization hit. Remy wasn't trying to win the fight anymore. He was constructing a narrative. Before RJ could react, Remy drove another vicious punch into his face, sending him stumbling backward directly into the broken conference table. The glass shattered beneath his weight with a deafening crash. Agony exploded through his shoulder. His vision blurred instantly. Remy moved quickly after that. Terrifyingly quickly. He poured whiskey across RJ's shirt and hands. Scattered broken glass strategically around the room. Tilted furniture to suggest chaotic drunken destruction rather than assault. Every movement carried practiced calculation. RJ tried forcing himself upright despite the pain. You psycho, Remy crouched beside him calmly. You should have minded your own business. Then he struck RJ again. Darkness swallowed everything seconds later. When consciousness finally returned, bright white light stabbed painfully through RJ's eyes. The sharp smell of antiseptic filled the air around him, while distant voices echoed somewhere nearby. Hospital. Every part of his body hurt. Fragments of memory returned slowly. The confrontation, the fight, Remy's cold expression as he staged the scene. Panic surged instantly. RJ forced himself upright despite overwhelming dizziness. A nurse rushed toward him immediately. You need to stay down. Where's Electra? The question emerged before anything else. Because deep down, even injured and disoriented, RJ already understood the real purpose behind everything Remy did. Division, isolation, control. And Electra had become the next target. Hours later, that fear proved devastatingly justified. Electra arrived at the hospital pale and visibly shaken after hearing about the accident from company employees. Portrayed by Linnea Grace, Electra had always trusted RJ's sincerity even during moments of tension between them. But trust became fragile when surrounded by carefully manufactured evidence. And Remy manufactured everything perfectly. By the time Electra entered RJ's hospital room, the narrative had already spread throughout Forrester Creations. RJ got drunk at the office. RJ lost control. RJ destroyed property during some kind of emotional breakdown. Several employees even claimed hearing shouting earlier that evening, though none witnessed the actual confrontation itself. Exactly as Remy intended. Electra stood near the doorway staring at RJ with wounded uncertainty. They said you attacked him. RJ's chest tightened immediately. No, he said hoarsely. Electra, listen to me. You were drinking? It was staged. But even saying the words aloud sounded desperate. Electra crossed her arms tightly around herself, visibly struggling between concern and distrust. Why would Remy lie? Because he's dangerous. Because he manipulates everyone. Because he's targeting you. RJ wanted to scream the truth at her. Instead, exhaustion and frustration tangled together inside him until his thoughts felt chaotic. He's been lying from the beginning. Electra shook her head slowly. This doesn't make sense anymore. RJ saw it happening in real time. The doubt. The confusion. Exactly what Remy wanted. I found records from his art school, RJ insisted. Violence. Stalking. Assault accusations. Electra looked shaken briefly, but only briefly. Then uncertainty returned stronger than before. Or maybe we're looking for reasons to hate him. The accusation hit harder than the physical injuries. Because Remy succeeded. He had poisoned trust itself. RJ stared at Electra in disbelief, while the horrifying scope of Remy's manipulation finally became clear. This was never merely about hurting people individually. It was about isolating them emotionally until nobody knew what truth looked like anymore. Electra stepped backward toward the door. I think you need help. Those words shattered something inside RJ completely. Not because she intended cruelty, but because she genuinely believed them. Remy transformed RJ from protector into threat with terrifying efficiency. And once doubt entered relationships already strained by family conflict, it spread rapidly. Within days, the incident ignited fresh warfare between the Logans and Forrestos. Accusations exploded across private meetings and tense family dinners alike. Some believed RJ's version of events. Others viewed his claims as paranoia fueled by jealousy and emotional instability. Steffi defended Electra fiercely. Brooke questioned why Remy remained near the company at all. Ridge demanded everyone stop escalating the situation before permanent damage occurred. But permanent damage had already begun. Because trust, once fractured deeply enough, rarely returns intact. Meanwhile, Remy moved quietly through the chaos he created, watching relationships deteriorate exactly as planned. Dylan grew increasingly withdrawn beneath the weight of secrets and fear. Electra distanced herself emotionally from RJ. The Forrester and Logan factions blamed each other for the growing instability infecting every corner of their lives. And at the center of it all stood Remy Price.
Calm.
Patient, untouched, like a man setting fire simply to enjoy watching people burn. The tragedy was not merely that RJ failed to stop him. The tragedy was that RJ discovered the truth too late to prevent Remy from already embedding himself deep within the fractures dividing both families. By the time anyone fully realized the danger, suspicion had already poisoned loyalty beyond easy repair. And somewhere beneath the glittering skyline of Los Angeles, while powerful families tore each other apart over accusations and misunderstandings, Remy continued smiling quietly to himself, because chaos was never a side effect.